Let's talk about the stimulus now. All eyes on what Capitol Hill does today. Let's take a deep dive into these numbers. Today is debate day. We've been waiting for Congress to get off its stuff, get back from vacation. And guess what? The Senate is back in session today. They are going to be throwing out the scaffolding of what this stimulus package will be. And guess what? There's a narrow window of time, folks. I mean, here we are on the 20th of July. And in just a few short days, unemployment benefits dry up, eviction moratoriums dry up. We are under a crunch time right now. And look, this is a crunch time of their own doing. They had 2 months to deal with this, but Republicans wanted to take a wait and see approach. They wanted to sit back and just wait and see, and nothing to see here, everything is fine. President Trump was asked about the economy this weekend and how, come election day, if this isn't better, you're probably going to lose, Mr. President. And I don't know where the president's getting his numbers. He's saying the economy is looking great and it's expanding every day. Chris Wallace was showing him numbers both from J.P. Morgan and the Congressional Budget Office that say otherwise on these unemployment numbers. But it's about to get a whole lot worse if 28 million people are evicted and people continue to lose their jobs because they're not able to go back to a job if it dries up. So the president was asked about that this weekend on Fox News Sunday. Take a listen.
You're running in large part on the economy. You built it once. Now we have the coronavirus. You're going to build it again. And in fact, you had great jobs numbers in May. You had solid jobs numbers in June. But I want you to look at some projections. The Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says the unemployment rate at the end of the year will be 10.5%. J.P. Morgan says in the fourth quarter, GDP will contract by 6.2%. With states now rolling back some of the reopening and well, there are a lot of Republican states that are doing it, like Texas. But
they'll be open very soon.
Let me just ask my question.
There's no reason for California to be doing what they're doing.
All right,
except for November 3rd.
With the states shutting back the reopening, in a lot of cases, new lockdowns, won't the economy still be a problem for you on election day?
I don't think so. I think the economy is expanding and growing beautifully. Now, the Democrats want to keep it closed as long as possible because they think that's good for election. But I think the economy is doing very well. Now we're coming back, and we're coming back at a level that nobody would have thought possible. And by the way, take a look at a gauge, whether you like it or not, the stock market. The stock market, NASDAQ, hit its all-time high 2 weeks ago, and it's beaten it 14 different times, okay? The stock market, Dow, etc., is 1,000 points away from its all-time high, meaning very close. We're going to have a stock market, perhaps, on November 3rd, that's the highest in history.
That's Grover's response right there. Anytime someone brings up the stock market, wants to bring up the stock market as an example of how we can gauge the success of the economy right now, that's what I want to do. I want to be like Grover, just burying my head into a pillow. I mean, as we've repeatedly said here on the show, the stock market is not a gauge of how you are doing, right? Do you feel fine that the stock market is doing great because the Federal Reserve has been propping them up, buying up all of these corporate junk bonds and pumping tons of money in so that they can stay liquid? No, has nothing to do with you, does it? So looking at the stock market as a gauge of success is bunk. It's been totally out of whack, totally removed from reality. So that is an argument. I don't get it. Anytime anyone wants to do that is ridiculous. And I feel like Grover wanting to bury my head in that pillow as well. I don't buy it. What do you think? Also, there is, when we talk about these states closing up again, there is broad agreement that there is a need to perhaps go under lockdown. You're hearing it from Greg Abbott in Texas. You're hearing it actually from a lot of different lawmakers in Florida. You're hearing it from California. You're hearing it from different states. And so these states that are looking about going into a lockdown again, there's no evidence that they would be doing it for November 3rd. I mean, California is a blue state to begin with. What would happen? I mean, if California goes under lockdown to protect people, Los Angeles County is out of control right now. Is it to somehow push Democrats into winning on November 3rd? I don't know. I've never heard one Democrat say that that's the case. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments about that. But the broader economic picture right now is bad news. And President Trump in this interview also said that he will not support a new stimulus package if there is not a payroll tax cut included in the stimulus package. There must be a payroll tax cut included, or he'll get out his veto pen and this thing will not go any further. So I guarantee you there's going to have to be some sort of a payroll tax cut in this plan. Otherwise, it's not going to leave the Senate. They're not going to waste their time on sending the president something that they know he's going to veto. So that will likely be in there. So let's go through some of the other items now as they sit back and try to debate this thing this week. Again, today is day one, and we've been hearing reports they could have this thing on the president's desk signed by Friday of this week. All right, let's dive into some of the details here. So there's going to be a heavy there's going to be a heavy emphasis on education, according to the reports, giving schools increased funds to help prepare for fall reopenings. There will be widespread liability protection. This, of course, is a big piece that Mitch McConnell wants, the Senate Majority Leader, including for restaurants, hotels, hospitals, universities, school districts. Many Democrats strongly oppose this because they believe in the HEROES Act. There are provisions in there from their OSHA provisions that would not only protect workers, but would also protect the businesses. They think that it does enough, so they do not support this additional liability protection, which would keep businesses from getting sued for up to 5 years. That's part of this. Increased funding for COVID testing and vaccine research and development. The bill is also likely to include a tax credit for vaccines, extension of the Paycheck Protection Program. Republicans are going to propose $134 billion that's left in the program would be reappropriated for a phase 4. Small business revenue loss will be a key parameter for one of those provisions. So if you're a small business that's lost revenue, you would be able to apply and get some of this Paycheck Protection Program to cover that lost revenue, which would be really great for a lot of these small businesses. Of course, that payroll tax cut, as I mentioned, another source who said expect something on that gives Trump's insistence that it be included. It's gonna be there, otherwise this thing gets vetoed. We're also looking at whether or not we will see additional checks right now. And this could be the big bargaining piece between Democrats and Republicans on stimulus checks and whether or not we get an additional liability protection. If the Democrats are able to give on liability protection, then Republicans may be willing to give on stimulus checks and a new round of actual checks being rolled out to Americans. Senator Hoyer, Steny Hoyer, says this crisis is still with us. Almost every economist tells us if you don't respond, it's going to cost you more in the long run. So there's an awareness, I think, of getting this through. You also had two different Fed chairs, former Fed chairs, Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen, coming out this weekend saying we need to pass additional stimulus. We need it to be bigger than what we're hearing right now, which is that this thing will likely have a price tag of about $1 trillion. That's the number that Mitch McConnell wanted to hit. So it looks like that's going to be the beginning debate, $1 trillion. But again, the former Fed chairs, Janet Yellen, Ben Bernanke, saying, no, that's way too small. It needs to be bigger than that. We cannot worry about deficits right now, they said, because interest rates are so low. We can basically be borrowing money for free in order to fight this pandemic. That even if it cost us $2-3 trillion, we need to do it. That coming from the former Fed chair on that. Mitch McConnell is going to brief Republicans in a conference on Tuesday, so tomorrow, and then it's going to roll out to the public later. So they're working on the final pieces of it today. Then they're going to roll it out to their committee and conference tomorrow, and then we will likely hear what's fully in this thing later in the week. But again, we're getting all of these dispatches from Mike Allen at Axios and Jeff Stein at the Washington Post doing some great reporting on all of this, being able to pull these different pieces out of it. There will not be, I repeat, according to these reports, there will not be additional money for state and local governments. But Republicans want to ease provisions, previous guidelines on how states can spend the leftover money that they got from the first CARES Act. There were quite a few extensive provisions that kept them from spending it in the ways that they needed to. So they may roll those back, but there will be no additional money for state and local governments. What? House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says that's a must-have. That absolutely must be in this thing. That's a non-starter. We have to have money for state and local governments, or it's going to be a total crap show. With all of these municipalities bleeding money right now, states having to furlough workers because they can't afford to pay them, state unemployment offices that can't deal with this. Another piece of this is unemployment, of course. Unemployment benefits. We are hearing that there may be some movement from Secretary Mnuchin and others to work with Democrats on a compromise on unemployment. So instead of the $600 per week in unemployment benefits that is set to run out next week, there may be some compromise between $200 and $400 per week in federal unemployment benefits. Now, of course, Republicans have been arguing that it's a disincentive for getting back to work. Democrats say it's essential. It's been a critical lifeline for people right now. And so what if people have made more, a little bit more, than what they've made while they've been working? This is an opportunity for them to reinvest that money in the economy, pay down some debt, and have a lifeline right now while they're out of work and while their job might not come back. It may enable them to put some money aside as a bit of a rainy day savings fund until they're able to find work again. So heaven forbid that this should be a little bit more than what they were making in their employment. Heaven forbid that we should maybe help lift people up out of poverty as much as we can right now. We're giving huge bailouts to banks and billionaires and cronies of the White House and of Congress. Why can't we help the American people with an extra amount of federal unemployment benefits? So again, there could be a compromise. We should know within the next 24, 48 hours about these unemployment benefits. That's issue number one, as that is set to expire in the next few days. Those are some of the big headlines right now. We still don't know whether or not we will see checks. I have not seen any reporting to suggest that we are going to see a change to those checks. All talk right now is around $1,200, but we still don't know if that's going to be included. Remember, if all of this, if you're doing money for education, if you're doing COVID testing money, if you're doing liability protection and other things, and getting money out to these schools, a hospitality industry, and other things, where is this additional money going to come from to pay for checks? So I hope that that's a big part of it. So again, we will see today this part of the coronavirus package. Senate will get together. They are going to be going deeper into this inside the Republican-controlled caucus. They're not going to be releasing this tomorrow. It goes to the conference, so they'll get to see more pieces of this. And then by the end of the week, the public will learn what is in this thing. And the reports are that we could see a vote by the end of the week on this, where it would get then to the president's desk. I just don't see how they get it done in that amount of time. Here's why. Number one, if it's $1 trillion, okay, that's way too low. If there's no stimulus checks in there for the American people, no direct stimulus checks, it's not going to fly. If there is not any state and local government money coming, I don't see how that's going to fly either for Democrats. Also, what will be the adjusted gross income cap? Will it sit at $40,000 per year, or will they move it up a little bit? Democrats are not going to go for that. So those are some of the big sticking points. Another big sticking point is the liability insurance piece. Democrats just don't think that that's necessary. They think that the OSHA provision that they have already put in the HEROES Act, it covers it. It's plenty. We don't need to have businesses being sue-proof for 5 years if they screw up and do stupid stuff and don't put protections in place to protect their employees. So the OSHA provision makes sure that each company does certain things to make sure they're coronavirus compliant. It also protects the workers. So if they have this OSHA certification, then they are protected legally from being sued because they've been OSHA compliant. So they think that that's enough. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that in the comments section. Is liability protection important? I believe that it is. I think we're such a sue-happy country as it is. In the United States, I absolutely think that there needs to be additional liability protection for some of these businesses because, look, not everyone there's a lot of bad apples, right? And so someone's going to go and sue just because they think they may have gotten sick from work and that could totally crush a business. But turns out they might have gotten it from the bus ride on the way to work. I mean, who's to say? How can you prove this in a court of law that, yes, in fact, I got it from this in place of employment? It's ridiculous. How are you going to prove that anyway? We are likely again to see a veto if President Trump doesn't get his payroll tax cut. And of course, this all comes on the heels of what's going on with coronavirus. We thought we probably would see better jobs numbers and improvement in the economy, more people going back to work. And now we're having states that have dropped the football and we're rolling back, going way back to where we were just a few months ago and worse. So Florida right now is the epicenter of all of this. And page 1 of the Washington Post this morning just talks about, how did we screw this up? As a country right now, we're one of the worst in the world. How did we drop the ball like this? How did we go back to where we were and worse? just a few short months ago. Florida, over the weekend, reported over 12,000 new cases. The fifth day in a row that they have announced over 10,000 new infections. That's unbelievable. The virus has claimed over 140,000 lives in the United States. And Florida and Texas and other southern states, western states are shattering records right now every day. Governors saying we may have to do the unthinkable, which is to go under a new total lockdown. Again, a stay-at-home order in these states. But Florida not having any of it. Governor DeSantis down there doesn't want to do that. But you have lawmakers in Miami and others saying, how in the world are we going to open schools in a few short weeks? You know, lawmakers in Miami-Dade County are saying, that's laughable. That's like a suicide move to open schools in Miami-Dade County, where it's the epicenter right now. Worse than Wuhan, according to those reports. You're going to reopen schools right now? And some schools opening in August. So forget early September. Let's talk about just in a week, some schools are reopening in parts of the country. How are you going to pull that off? I mean, this is a disaster. We do not have a handle on this. Dr. Fauci has been warning about this. Of course, the leading physician in the White House has been saying that, you know, look, we've got to wear masks. And he's really skeptical about doing any sort of reopening. He said we'd have to look at this as a city-by-city, case-by-case basis for reopening schools, because you might have areas that are more of a hotspot than others. What sort of social distancing can we put in place inside the schools? Are we going to have like plastic cubicles around every student? Will teachers' desks have a big plastic shield in front of it? Will you be able to sit with friends at lunch in the cafeteria? Or are you going to have to sit by yourself with a plastic bubble around you? It's our new reality. 85 babies just tested positive in one Texas area. 85 babies. 13-year-old boy who was perfectly healthy just contracted coronavirus and died. So this idea that young people are unaffected by that is garbage. They may be able to bounce back pretty quickly, but we don't know how long this thing lasts. I saw an interview with Tom Hanks this weekend on the Stephen Colbert Show, and it was fascinating. He said when he got the virus, he got it and he felt like his bones felt like soda bread, like he was so brittle. And it affected him and his wife totally differently. She lost all sense of smell. They've been testing his antibodies ever since he got sick, and his antibodies of the coronavirus have almost disappeared. So that raises the question, can you get this again pretty quickly? So what if there is a vaccine? You get injected with a vaccine, do those antibodies just disappear a short time later? And therefore you're not protected? So what good is a vaccine anyway? So a lot of questions that we still have for what this virus does, how it travels, and how we're able to quell this thing. Dr. Fauci says that even in the face of having a vaccine, we still have to be massively cautious. But of course, there's this back and forth right now between the White House and Dr. Fauci. President Trump's denying. He's like, no, I like him a lot. I like him a lot. We have no fighting. There's no fighting going on. We like him a lot. He spoke out of both sides of his mouth during this interview with Chris Wallace, because Chris asked him specifically about Dr. Fauci and why are they throwing him under the bus right now? And President Trump said, no, we're not. If maybe one member of my administration did that, then maybe. But then 2 seconds later, President Trump also criticizes him and his mistakes. So here's your top infectious disease doctor. It just seems unbelievable to me. Yes, I guess he's made mistakes. We all have, but what are you doing right now? I just don't get it. So here's President Trump answering this question about Dr. Fauci.
Why on earth would your administration be involved in a campaign at this point to discredit Dr. Fauci, who is the nation's top infectious disease expert?
Because we're not. If one man from my administration doesn't like him because he made a few mistakes. Look, Dr. Fauci said don't wear a mask. Dr. Fauci told me not to ban China. It would be a big mistake. I did it over and above his recommendation. Dr. Fauci then said you saved tens of thousands of lives, more than that. He said you saved tens of thousands of lives. Dr. Fauci's made some mistakes, but I spoke to him yesterday at length. I have a very good relationship with Dr. Fauci.
But sir, this weekend, your White House put out a series of statements, so-called mistakes, that Dr. Fauci had made. One of your closest aides, one of your right-hand men, Daniel Scavino, put out This, have you seen this?
Well,
This
doctor,
cartoon?
look.
Dr. Fawcett, it shows him as a leaker and an alarmist.
Oh, I don't know that
why,
he's a
why
licker.
would you
He's
do
a little
that?
bit of an alarmist. That's okay. A little bit
He's
of
a
an
bit
alarmist.
of an alarmist?
A little bit of an alarmist. Let me just say, Dr. Fauci at the beginning, and again, I have a great relationship with him. I spoke to him at length yesterday. Dr. Fauci at the beginning said, this will pass, don't worry about it, this will pass. He was wrong. Dr. Fauci said, don't ban China, don't ban China. I did. He then admitted that I was right.
But you made mistakes too.
I guess everybody makes mistakes.
I was going to say, you said at one point,
It's one person coming in from China, and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine.
When you have 15 people, and the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to zero, that's a pretty good job we've done. I think we're going to be very good with the coronavirus. I think that at some point that's going to sort of just disappear, I hope. I'll be right eventually. I will be right
understand.
eventually. You know, I said it's going to disappear. I'll say it again. But
I will be right eventually. That's going to be my new motto. When my wife wants to pick on me, I'm just going to say, you know what? I'll be right eventually. Maybe not in this discussion, not in this argument, but I'll be right eventually. Grover, is that a good argument? Something I can count on? Not a good move. I'll be right eventually. I just don't get throwing Dr. Fauci under the bus on all of this. I'm just going to say, I think the Republicans have been an absolute disaster in this stimulus battle. I think they have, it's a total dereliction of duty, political malpractice. You've had 2 months. You knew that these deadlines were coming of your own making. These were your own deadlines for unemployment benefits, eviction moratoriums, where millions of Americans could be out of homes in the next few days, and unemployment benefits drying up and people can't pay their bills, and now states going back under lockdown. There's been a total dereliction of duty. You have at least some Republicans who are saying in the Senate, look, we're prepared to go beyond that August recess. Oh, imagine. Really? You're not going to go on another recess on August 7th and go back to the beach for another month? Remember, if they leave on August 7th, they don't come back until September 8th. That's a narrow window to get this done. So at least you're hearing from some Senate Republicans that say, if we don't get this done, we're going to stick it out a little bit further. Good. But they've been a total disaster, a laughingstock. Meanwhile, the European Union this morning with some breaking news overnight. They were up late. You know, Europeans like to stay up late, but boy, they were up to like 3 a.m. trying to hash out the European Union stimulus. And there's been agreement. There's 4 countries that, of course, are always the frugal 4, as they call them, that don't want additional spending. There seems to be a framework emerging of about $400 billion, and it would be up to the different countries to decide how they spend that stimulus money in the Eurozone. There's some economies that have really suffered, others that have fared better. Germany has an unemployment rate of about 5%, so some have done much better than others in all of this. But again, the Eurozone getting together, imagine that, all of those countries coming together at 3 a.m. and got it done. We don't have it finalized yet, but they stayed up late and they're getting it done. And they've already passed multiple stimulus to keep wages subsidized, keep businesses from mostly going under as best they can. Why can't the United States do this? So that's our show. That's our big stimulus update for today. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel and join our community if you'd like. We also have our daily newsletter, which goes out every morning, so you can read it over coffee. And just go to morninginvest.com and you can sign up for free and you can read it in under 5 minutes. My thanks to all of you. We will see you next time, everyone.